comes to gaming, developers have to fine-tune graphics, gameplay, tone, music, and plenty of other factors to ensure that they're delivering the best product possible. On top of everything else, they need to make sure their work leaves an impression right out the gate, but that's easier said than done. Complex plots and intricate mechanics can take a lot of time to intro to players, so you might lose them while trying to get them on board with the story or everything that you have to teach them about the gameplay loop. But similarly, being dumped right in the middle can feel kind of alienating because you just don't know what's going on. With that said, a couple of recent gems found the perfect way to set things up, quickly engaging players with their stories, mechanics, or as the case is with a lot of the entries I'll be talking about, both. Each game on this list took a different approach, but they all managed to largely grab a lot of their players' attention pretty much from the jump, and I'm gonna try and do that too. So let me know how I go. We are talking about video game openings, but I will have to spoil a lot of video game openings to tell you about them. So there are spoilers ahead for the video game openings, beware. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 recent video game openings nobody saw coming.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Well, you can. Right now, you can get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. And all you've got to do is click the link in the description below or on this QR code that should be right down here in this video to get signed up with this great deal right now.
Number 10, Bayonetta 3. In the first Bayonetta, Cereza saved the universe by defeating a malevolent god. In the sequel, the gun-toting Umbra Witch averted reality's destruction again after vanquishing an even greater deity. As such, it was a wonder how Bayonetta 3 was gonna up the stakes, but within the first few seconds, the installment proved that she'd face a threat unlike any other. After booting up the game, a Cereza from a parallel universe has to face up against a cosmic entity called the Singularity. Despite giving her all, the mysterious adversary effortlessly slays the sassy sorceress. Worse still, Singularity reveals he's absorbed entire dimensions, turning him into the most powerful being in the multiverse. The scene then cuts to the canonical you who's shopping Manhattan when the city's suddenly engulfed in a gargantuan flood. While millions drown, you're forced to fight one of the Singularity's lackeys, who is the size of a skyscraper. It's Bayonetta. Just to make sure this bout is even more sensational, a new power awakens within our enchanting heroine, allowing her to take control of any demon that she summons. Through dancing and questionable gyrating, you activate your pet kaiju Gamora, who wails on the boss in a Godzilla-styled showdown. Players were obviously blown away by this opening by and large, not just because it was really over the top, but because it had you set up to wonder just how grandiose things were going to get from there. Number 9, Final Fantasy XVI. Even though Final Fantasy has never been afraid to push mature themes, the 16th installment really cranked it up a notch or two, or 10. Final Fantasy XVI centers around the firstborn son of royal Clive, who has to protect his younger brother Joshua. While taking the boy to a ceremony, the siblings are ambushed by a warring faction. The invaders abruptly impale Joshua's chocobo, drenching the cobblestone below in blood. Chocobos are among the most beloved creatures in Final Fantasy, so it was absolutely jaw-dropping to see the adorable critter suffer such a grisly fate. Seriously, this is something you'd expect to see in Game of Thrones if you don't have any kind of reference point. But it doesn't stop there. When the hostile soldiers slay the Duke, it awakens a destructive power within Joshua, turning him into the Phoenix, a classic summon in the franchise. Moments after, another fan favorite Ifrit appears and just kills off Phoenix, theoretically killing off Joshua as well. This wasn't just a cinematic and visceral prelude, it perfectly set up Clive's character and motivation. Most importantly, this intro warned players that this game was going to be walking a way darker path than what had come before. Number 8, Baldur's Gate 3. Due to Baldur's Gate being absolutely dormant over the last few decades, D&D purists were very excited to return to the Forgotten Realms when we knew Baldur's Gate 3 was coming. To keep up with the competition, the threequel was expected to make a few changes. But having said that, nobody thought that the first thing they'd see in the main campaign was a Cthulhu-inspired warlock placing a parasitic tadpole into the eyeball of our hero. Just to be absolutely clear, if you haven't played it, this particular moment of body horror happens within the first minute of the game. While players are trying to digest what they just saw, the vessel you're residing on is attacked by dragons, causing a mind flayer to teleport you to the Nine Hells, where you're attacked by an army of devils. Even though that's a lot to take in, it's sort of the idea. The gameplay may be accessible, but the plot is relentlessly chaotic. Though the sickening imagery could be considered gratuitous, it does help players connect with the protagonist, since they're against a ticking clock thanks to the mind-controlling critter digging through your skull. Although it seemed impossible that Baldur's Gate 3 was going to be able to live up to expectations, especially the ones put on it by old-school Baldur's Gate fans, that showstopper of an opening really let our hopes stay pretty high, and fortunately, the rest of the game delivered too. Number 7, Atomic Heart. Atomic Heart may have received mixed reviews, but it's hard to fault the preamble. Rather than cramming a ton of backstory down your throat, the retro-futuristic FPS starts off with the protagonist sailing into a Soviet city through a canal. The boat moves slowly, which gives players time to bask in their surroundings. There's no direct exposition, but there's enough to be seen and heard to recognize that Atomic Heart takes place in an alternative USSR, where floating cities, propaganda-filled airships, and robotic servants are just the norm. Despite things seeming somewhat idyllic and the citizens appearing compliant and sort of okay with things, it seems like there's something amiss when the androids start to slightly malfunction. The more you interact with the robots, the more they pause at random intervals, behave with mild hostility, or speak with an irregular pitch. Although there's no sign of grave danger, there are enough indicators that the demise of the so-called utopia is pretty darn imminent. Sure enough, the tranquility is soon dashed, with the passive machines going full-on Terminator, leading to horror-level scares and grotesque violence. Even though players obviously knew that something was gonna go amiss, watching everything go from 0 to 100 this quickly was absolutely rattling for a lot of people, and also totally enthralling. Number 6, Sifu. Slowcap's age-defying beat-em-up starts with a clever role reversal, with players taking control of the antagonist, a disgraced martial artist called Yang. Yang barges into a dojo with his cohorts and attacks the students, which highlights the game's fluid combat system. After confronting the school's master, it's clear that your antagonist, at this point the antagonist you are playing as, is confronting this guy because he was kicked out of the dojo. Yang kills his former mentor only to learn that the mentor's child is watching. Though Yang's disciple murders the child, they're soon revived since they're holding a magic talisman which resurrects the wielder. Realizing the talisman ages them every time they're brought back to life, the hero vows to use it carefully so that they can avenge their father. Basically, the prologue brilliantly sets up every single aspect of the game, including the overarching narrative, the villain, the main character's motivation, the battle system, and the central mechanic. Obviously, the nuanced aspects of the combat do take time to master. I mean, that's kind of the point of the game. It's supposed to be tricky, but you go into the combat with a basic understanding of what it is you're trying to do and how to execute that. Although games can struggle to cohesively introduce all of the key elements within the first few hours, Sifu pulled it off within 10 minutes, which is pretty darn impressive. Number 5, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Though Breath of the Wild threw players into the deep end right away, Tears of the Kingdom took the opposite approach, using the prologue to expand the lore and really set up the plot. When an energy-sapping ooze called Gloom infects the kingdom, Link and Zelda set off to explore the depths of the castle to try and get to the bottom of it. It's a sticky situation. I'm sorry, that wasn't written in this brilliant article. I put that in, that's my fault. As they traverse underground, Link discovers the mummified husk of his nemesis Ganondorf. With little warning, the corpse revives, taunting his arch-enemy. Despite being in a weakened state, Ganondorf easily deflects Link's attack and lops off his arm. Being a Nintendo property, violence in The Legend of Zelda has always been tame, which is why it was surprising to see the main character have his limb ripped off before the title even dropped. Just when it seems like things can't get any worse, then Zelda mysteriously disappears before reappearing in the distant past. Although The Legend of Zelda does tend to begin with a bang, Tears of the Kingdom took things to an entirely different level, which is pretty fitting since Link awakens immediately after in a civilization in the sky. Number 4. Spider-Man 2. Many games start off with a tutorial or simplistic gameplay, which allows newcomers to slowly come to grips with the controls and mechanics. Other titles like Resident Evil 3 Remake mix it up by forcing you to face a terrifying adversary when you're still trying to figure out the basics. Rather than picking a lane, Spider-Man 2 decides to start you off with a tutorial and a gigantic boss fight. Sony's superb sequel opens with Peter Parker and Miles Morales donning their Spidey gear after learning that Sandman is terrorizing the city. Even though gaming tutorials can feel forced, familiarizing yourself with the Spider-Man's moves feels pretty organic here. Throughout the confrontation, Peter and Miles strategize how they're going to subdue the silicon-based supervillain by telling each other what technique or gadget to use. By approaching it this way, players are directly told what to do without it feeling like it's interrupting the story or the flow of combat. The battle itself is also magnificently innovative. It showcases real-time destruction, environmental interactivity, and dual character switching. The presentation also gets top marks since the cinematic to gameplay transition is imperceptible. Although newbies could be overwhelmed by the daunting boss or the deluge of mechanics, the intro is surprisingly accessible without compromising the epic scale. Number 3. Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village begins with Ethan at home with his wife Mia and their child Rose, which is kind of nice because what he went through in the last game was absolutely brutal and he deserves a little moment to himself, but we're at the start of a Resident Evil game, so it's not going to go well. At the drop of a hat, the house is raided by armed soldiers, terrifying Ethan and his family. Now, like I said, that turn of events, not too surprising, something was going to go awry, but what happens next is truly shocking. While Ethan's trying to calm Mia down, she's shot dead by the squad's leader. While Ethan is reeling at the unceremonious execution of his wife, he sees that the shooter is none other than Chris Redfield, a recurring hero, if you don't know, in the franchise, and the person who rescued Ethan in Resident Evil 7's epilogue. While Ethan is understandably still processing all of the things that just happened, Chris kidnaps Rose and then leaves. Considering that Mia did just read a spooky tale to Rose prior to all of this going down, the chilling tone did set up that something sinister was going to happen. Still, nobody was ready to see Ethan's entire life implode before his eyes in one fell swoop. Number 2. God of War Ragnarok. Given this is God of War, it's always kind of easy to grab players' attention by having Kratos square off against a mythological monster or a wicked deity. But God of War Ragnarok tries a different tack, specifically with him and his son mourning the death of Fenrir. This sets a somber tone from the get-go, and it ties into the aftermath of the last game's epilogue. While the pair are still grieving, Kratos is confronted by Freya, Fenrir's vengeful owner. The swelling tension shifts then into awe and dread at the arrival of Odin the Allfather and his hammer-wielding son Thor. Though this scene is definitely exposition heavy, it emphasizes that the dual gods aren't just generic villains, but they're also calculated antagonists directly tied to our hero's fate. Since you know you're going to be facing the mighty pair at some point, the dialogue, while extensive, is never boring. Sure enough, the dramatic and deeply subversive battle does take place, and it's every bit as satisfying as you're hoping it'll be. While that introduction could have come across as overstuffed, it does beautifully work as a tutorial, a boss fight, and a drastic turn in the narrative all at once. Number 1. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. With its painterly imagery, dynamic combat system, and top-tier voice acting, especially from the phenomenal Andy Serkis, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 made an astounding impression on the masses. The story and character conflicts are so creatively thought-provoking, the players are sure to be invested right away. And also the fact that it doesn't tell you everything up front here is intriguing instead of alienating. The game revolves around a terrifying entity called the Paintress, who paints a decreasing number every year, causing everyone in the area of that age to disappear. Knowing that 33-year-olds are the next to go, 32-year-old Gustav and a bunch of other expeditioners head out to try and stop the paintress before the cycle keeps repeating. It was tough playing this game as a 34-year-old, I'm going to tell you that right now. What makes the premise so riveting is the fact that there is no build-up. Rather than being slowly introduced to the fantastical world and what's happening within it, you're watching innocent people vanishing into thin air within the first act, early in the first act. Even before it's clear what's happening, you feel for the characters because it's obvious they're utterly consumed by terror and helplessness, and there's that phenomenal performance part. As hard-hitting as the concept is, it pales in comparison to the upcoming bombshell, and I am about to spoil a huge thing that happens in the first act, and you must play this game because it's fantastic. It happens at the end of the first act, and I'm gonna tell you right now, that was your time to bail. Okay, here we go. Although Gustav is set up as a traditional protagonist, he does get killed off in the beginning of his quest. Not only are his comrades at a loss of what to do, so are the players, because you're absolutely believing that this is the gung-ho hero who's going to prevail, and he's the center of the group. As devastating as the moment is, it feels really impactful in that it reminds Gustav's allies how fragile everything is and what they're fighting for. This is a fantastic game, and that's really just the first of the many twists that come about. So if you're into story and the gameplay sounds like your kind of thing, you should absolutely check it out. Also, even if I just spoiled that, trust me, it's just the beginning.